You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts on Netroots Radio or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There is a PayPal button at our website, or if you'd like, you could just mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for March 3rd, 2025. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where it has already been and is going to continue to be a busy week for the professional left. It is the Professional Left with Driftglass and Blue Gal. Hello, Blue Gal.
Hi. Yeah, we are scheduled tomorrow to be on Bob Seska again. So mark your calendars for that.
Yes.
And then right after that, Driftglass has to hurry like a bunny over to a spot in town where he can get 4 bars on his phone so he can appear with Digby and Desi Doyen on the Brad Friedman Show. I don't know what they're going to talk about.
Who knows?
But while he does that, I'll be recording my knitting podcast. Knitting's going very well. I've bribed the cats. Bosco's on the saggy sofa. And Olive is at my feet lying down cleaning his paws. And Barack Hussein, the Kenyan usurper, is sleeping behind you, right, Driftglass?
When last he was seen, I hear him licking something. I assume he's cleaning it. He had a rough night last night. He was out late at the clubs, and he's sleeping one off today. So
he's always sleeping one off.
Yes, he is.
He does start a party at around 11:30 out here in the living room.
He does. He wants fight party. He
wants the automated toys turned on, and at 11:30.
Yeah, on the dot.
We're really ready to crash at that point if we haven't crashed already. And he comes in and just like, what the hell? Where's my disco ball? You people.
And then you hear, yeah. And he's dragging his the conquest of the night, his little blue mouse, in for us all to see. Oh, yes.
He has a blue mouse that's about 12 years old.
And then there's this clawing sound of him clawing his way up the side of the bed. He's a big boy now.
He is a big boy.
I'm building him some stairs, so fear not, he will have an easier route. But he has an easier route down.
I know he knows how to climb down.
He just doesn't ever take it going up, which is a very cat thing to do.
I think he really just loves the idea of climbing that tree to get into the bed.
And then he sits on my chest and looks at me like I've done something wrong. So
we are procrastinating because we don't really want to talk about the news this week.
No. Well, we'll also have our regular Thursday podcast. So
and we got our Thursday show, and then, that's good. And then
well, Friday, I've got a big day Friday because I've been invited to appear on the Bulwark podcast.
No.
Where it'll just be me listening in a royal and forgiving way to Mona Charen and Tom Nichols and Rick Wilson and Charlie Sykes and maybe Tim Miller, apologizing profusely for ever doubting that the left really had it right all along.
No.
And maybe they should have listened to us instead of shitting on us until it was too late. No?
I think that's in your head.
I think maybe I imagined that. I think
you're imagining that on your schedule.
I think Steve Schmidt will be back on MSNBC before that ever happens.
I think Steve Schmidt is talking to the governor of California right now and telling him to have a podcast with MAGA types.
Yeah, I think he is too.
Because that's good for his brand.
Yeah.
That's what I think is happening there. That iHeartRadio podcast that Gavin Newsom is doing.
Yeah, Gavin, have more MAGA people.
I don't know who he's talking to, but he's talking to some never-Trumper $1 million consultant about how to keep his brand going leading up to the next election when he runs for president.
He could do for you
to have a podcast where you debate MAGA and defeat MAGA and slam MAGA. And he's supposed to have Ben Shapiro, who's going to go off to the Ben Shapiro show and lie about what Gavin Newsom said.
Right. Well, Steve Schmidt can do for you what he did for Howard Schultz.
I think I'd be very worried about that if you're a Gavin Newsom fan.
Well,
I'm not dissing Gavin from the standpoint of, he's got the cod to swing.
Sure.
When it comes, we've got a deep bench for president.
Right. Yes, we do.
But what I'm saying is, whoever told him to do an iHeartRadio podcast where he debates MAGA because that makes him look good.
Yeah.
You're getting some bad advice there, buddy.
Well, as with Howard Schultz, it will make him $1 million poorer. And that's the point. It's to drain money from, frankly, credulous liberals who listen to never Trump advice.
Yeah, I just think it's it's bad. I think it's a bad idea. But
so I'm not going to be on the bulwark. Fine. But still, there was this headline in the Atlantic this very week that made me kind of wonder when we liberals will be getting our due. Quote, "At least now we know the truth."
Oh, now we know the truth. Okay, now, tell me more about this.
The words "now" and "we" are very important in this thing. Very important. "It's ugly but necessary to face," says David Frum, the Axis of Evil guy from the before time, who's a good writer, but
he's a good writer, but
he just skips from one high level assignment writing gig to another because he's in the club.
He's in the club.
So it doesn't matter what his past is. It doesn't matter. Anyway, Mr. Frum says the following: "At least the Oval Office meeting held by President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky." You see, this is clever because he gets paid by the word, I think. And so he is President Donald Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, like we wouldn't know who they were, was held in front of the cameras. False friendliness in public by Trump and Vance, followed by behind-the-scenes treachery, would have been much more dangerous to the Ukrainian cause. I agree. Instead, Trump and Vance have revealed to Americans, and to America's allies their alignment with Russia and their animosity towards Ukraine in general and its president in particular. The truth is ugly, but it's necessary that we face it, unquote. So, okay?
We.
And once again, for the 100th time, who the fuck is this we that we keep hearing about? And the Americans. Reveal to the Americans. Which Americans exactly are you talking about, David? Are you talking about the ones who voted for this thug 3 times in a row? Or the ones of us who warned against voting for this thug and voted against him 3 times in a row? Or are the ones you're talking about the ones who are still blithely unaware that any of this is going on, and when it finally bites them in the ass, I guarantee you will automatically blame both sides?
Yep.
Because what is this pundit fetish about pretending that out there somewhere there is some significant chunk of sentient public who are somehow unaware of what's going on and why it's going on?
Well, there is a significant chunk, but that's not what we're talking about. Listen to this by Jim Acosta, who's usually a stand-up guy. But this is just dumb. Quote, "This is not who we are." Again, we?
Don't make me laugh. I still have a trace of a cough, and if you make me laugh, I might start coughing.
Yeah, you might have a hurting chest the next day. All right. Going on with Jim Acosta. Trump's shameful Oval Office meeting with Zelensky. Now, I got you. Yep. It was shameful. That. Is only his latest betrayal of American values. Again, this is not who we are. What we are you talking about here, Jim? Jim, this is, on one level, this absolutely is who we are. This is who 49.8% of American voters are. They voted for him 3 times, and they won this time. So yeah, this is who we, that 49.8%, that's who we are.
That's who we are.
Yeah, and as a result, the United States is the bad guys now.
Yeah, we're the bad guys.
We're the pariah nation. We're outside looking in at our allies. You may think we're the same awesome country you thought we were a long time ago, but to quote Rachel Dawes from Batman Begins,
"Rachel, all this, it's not me. It's inside. I am more."
Bruce, deep down you may still be that same bright kid you used to be. But it's not who you are underneath. It's what you do that defines you.
It's not who you think you are on the inside. It's what you do that defines you. Of course, in the case of Batman, Bruce Wayne really was more than he appeared to be. His billionaire, wastrel, hookers, swimming in the pool, whatever, was an act because he was hiding being Batman. So he pretended to be billionaire, partier Bruce Wayne, right? In the case of Republican voters, the opposite is true. They're so much less than the legacy media built them up to be. So much weaker and so much stupider. So much crueler and more racist than the mainstream media will ever admit they are.
Mm-hmm.
And it was always obvious to anyone who bothered to really look at what they were saying and doing, what they were voting for, who they were watching and listening to, and who they hated. They put on garbage bags.
Yeah.
To prove their fealty to Donald Trump.
Yeah. And it isn't just Trump. They've been listening to Rush Limbaugh for 30 plus years.
Right.
And when Rush Limbaugh was near at death's door, Trump gave him the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Right.
That's who they are. Yeah. And they won. So by extension, that's who we are. So here's a riddle for you, Jim. How is the legacy media and American fascism like Trump and COVID? Well, here's the answer. They both believe that if they refused to count a potentially fatal problem, that meant the problem didn't really exist. It wasn't there. Mm-hmm. And that's why we're getting those safaris to the interior again. Like, oh my gosh, these people out there in these diners, they were told all these terrible things. And they just want better eggs. They just want cheaper eggs. We need to go talk to those people. No, you need to talk to us. Now, today, we're going to Sunday school.
Yep.
So
we're going to Sunday school, everybody.
We're going to Sunday school. So get in, losers. We're going to Sunday school. Specifically, we're going to go to our commie adult Sunday school. I feel funny even calling it Sunday school because it really isn't. This is the politically active liberal misfits of our school. And we are currently studying early imperial Rome and the historical dialectic of that period instead of, listening to homilies about turning sticks into snakes and stuff like that. Also, we talk about politics because Rome was all about politics. The early rise of Christianity was all about politics, all about the situation in the period at that time.
And may I say, I am comforted by that lesson.
Well, I am.
Right.
I am grounded by that.
Yeah.
There's just human nature going on all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start looking at the causes of historical events, you notice, oh, that's why that's happening. That's why we were never taught that in actual kiddie Sunday school.
Right.
Because it screws up the story of miracles and Jesus and heaven and afterlife. Because that's not what was going on at all. But we do talk about politics because that's inevitable. If you're going to talk about if you're going to talk about Octavius and Caesar and conquest and assassination and killing off the heads of people who cause trouble among the people, who raise up mobs, who are nonviolent or violent, politics always enters into it, both ancient and current. But this time, after, of course, we decided who would be baking what for the rummage sale, I'm doing the cookies, by the way.
He's making cookies for the rummage sale.
I'm making cookies for the rummage sale. Things got very quiet, which was very unusual for our class. Mm-hmm. And finally, the retired pastor who leads the class said, that's how bad things are now. So bad we can't even talk about it.
Yep.
And that was truer than you know. So,
and that's what broke the ice, I think.
Yeah.
Too.
Well, of course,
then
we
people
talked
could
about
talk about it. Yeah.
And we talked about it. And we all went through the list of horribles. And everybody there knew what all the lists were. And Keith Olbermann this, and MSNBC that, and the UN this. And so everybody went through their lists and got angrier and more sort of determined and sad. Mm-hmm. And a few of us, because we're smartasses, we went on to reinforce the point that this didn't just happen.
What he means by we and some of us is Driftglass.
Yeah, I kind of got up on my little soapbox. There were nods of agreement from a.
There were. You weren't doing this by yourself. Everyone was on your side. But
ladies and gentlemen,
you were the one who stood up and said.
I had to say the thing, and the thing was,
I had to say the thing.
This didn't just happen. That this all happened because our Republican neighbors and our colleagues and our family members voted for it.
And our fellow church members, you said.
Yeah,
which I did say. That made people sad and in nodding in agreement.
Yeah, people in this church with whom you have shared communion and pews and missions, they voted for this. Yeah. And they knew what they were doing. And we don't know how we're going to live with those people knowing what they have done to us on purpose with clear eyes, knowing exactly what they were voting for.
Yep.
So how do we live with these people?
Yeah. And I think that's when everybody was just kind of like, Yeah. We're sitting here in this classroom on the second floor. And we know that in the main congregation where they're taking communion that day,
right,
there are people who voted for this and still support it.
And are happy with it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so then our pastor said that he felt for this country something he couldn't remember feeling before: shame.
Mm-hmm.
That we're the bad guys now, the villains, we're the ones siding with North Korea and Russia at the UN. And from the point of view of the rest of the world, that shame is justified.
Mm-hmm.
Republicans nominated and voted for this monster 3 times, and they won twice. Mm-hmm. This is who they are, Jim Acosta.
Yep.
And by virtue of our citizenship, we're shackled to the monsters and fools. We're in that boat sinking.
Right.
And there's just no way around the fact that as hard as we fought for the values like democracy and justice, Republicans fought just a little bit harder and had racism on their side and sexism on their side. And they cheated for their values of white supremacy, fascism, thuggery, misogyny, ignorance, and cruelty.
Those are their values.
That's what they value.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. This is who they are. And because this is who they are, we are once again a house openly divided against itself. Once again, we are faced with the fact that this government cannot endure permanently half one thing and half its opposite. Now, in 1860, it was the conflict of half slave versus half free. But in 2025, the conflict is half fascist and half democracy. And since we're borrowing from Lincoln in saying that, let's include his June 16th, 1858 speech, which he delivered right here in Springfield, Illinois. Here we are, land of Lincoln. You can't get away from it.
Nope. He's everywhere.
Just drive down the street. He's everywhere. Mm-hmm. And he said on June 16th, 1858, here in Springfield, quote, "I do not expect the Union to be dissolved. I do not expect the house to fall, but I do expect it will cease to be divided. It will become all one thing or all the other," unquote. Mm-hmm. And to date, violence and threats of violence have been sporadic and entirely one-sided. This is from the New Republic. Quote, "Republicans are scared shitless of Trump's fans. Republican lawmakers who step out of line quickly face the wrath of Donald Trump's fan base. Fear might be the driving motivator behind Republican lawmakers' continual bend to Donald Trump. The GOP caucus is reportedly scared shitless of not just Trump's ire, but the personal vindictiveness and constant threat of political violence from his MAGA base across the country," unquote. And this is also just reflected in this MSN article. GOP lawmakers fear death threats and Gestapo-like behavior from Donald Trump supporters. And don't forget, Donald Trump released and pardoned his brown shirts.
He did. Turned them loose on us.
The MSN article says some Republicans in Congress reportedly fear retribution from MAGA supporters if they don't fall in line with President Donald Trump's agenda, unquote. And don't forget also, we don't know what's going on with WinRed, but you can bet that Donald Trump has threatened the funding and the reelection prospects. I mean, that's a small thing compared to being shot to death by a MAGA supporter. Mm-hmm. But that keeps even the most loyal Trumpite knowing that they're not going to be able to fund their campaign next time online because Donald Trump will cut them off.
Yeah. And so keeping with the Lincoln theme, we really can't pretend that what happened on February 28th is any less of a turning point in American history than was Selma or the attack on Fort Sumter.
And what you're talking about, February 28th, is the Oval Office meeting with Zelensky.
Absolutely. Yeah. That was Fort Sumter. That was our modern Fort Sumter. That
was Fort Sumter. Yeah.
They have begun shelling us. They have begun attacking. And so once again, we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether our nation or any nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal can continue to endure, just like Lincoln. Except, unlike Lincoln, you know what it would take to shut all of this madness down? All of it. To shut it down. It would not the nearly 700,000 dead Americans killed on both sides during the Civil War. Literally all it would take to shut this madness down are 7 patriotic Republicans. Just 7. Do the math. If just 3 Republicans stood with Democrats in the House, Democrats would control the majority. If just 4 Republicans stood with Democrats in the Senate, Democrats would control the majority.
And they could become independents and caucus with the Democrats this one time.
Yep. And I probably will do a separate post of the Watergate era Republicans who, in an open session, were crying and saying, my president should have kicked these assholes out of the Oval Office, but he didn't do that. He sat there and talked about blackmail. He talked about, and just the shock and fury and shame these people felt. One of them said, "This is our shame. Watergate is our shame." So there used to be Republicans like that. Maybe not a lot of them, but there used to be a few around somewhere.
Well, and Driftglass, it's so remarkable to think of a couple things. One is Nixon was told that he'd need $1 million,
right,
to cover this up,
right,
and he said on tape, "I can get that." And it was B.B. Rebozo. I mean, I remember this all.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
crystal clear, right?
No fair remembering stuff, Blue Gal.
Right. He had his millionaire funder, who would funnel him cash, anytime he wanted. Not to mention his vice president taking envelopes of cash on a separate scale, but $1 million. Donald Trump got $1 million from like 18 people for his inaugural campaign
as bribes.
Each
bribes. They were bribes, and
now he's selling dinners with himself. For $1 million a ticket at Mar-a-Lago. If you want a one-on-one with Trump, it's $5 million. This was reported this morning.
That's right.
Just come on in, pay your money. And he's selling green cards.
And that's small beer compared to the strategic Bitcoin reserve.
Oh, yeah, the strategic Bitcoin reserve, which we're going to get to in our news roundup.
It's going to rake in billions and billions of dollars for Trump and his friends, basically putting I heard it referred to as beanie babies in a vault. Yep. Because they might be valuable someday. And maybe beanie babies should be the reserve currency of the United States, Blue Gal, huh? Maybe that.
Put it at Fort Knox. Let's go.
And the scale of theft that's happening right out in the open that Republicans are just fine with. Fine, willing to look the other way and change the subject. So because there are no good Republicans left, instead, House Republicans are putting brakes on the town halls. Remember when they used to love their town halls? They used to love watching people get yelled at, watching the Tea Party scream at liberals and Democrats and people who weren't in line. They used to love that shit. But they're talking about getting rid of those after the blowback after Trump administration cuts, after all those Doge cuts. One GOP aide said House Republican leaders are urging lawmakers to stop engaging in them altogether, completely getting rid of, any contact with the public.
And that's when the indivisible groups just decide to hold their own town hall.
Fuck yeah. So,
and I didn't tell you that the vice presidential nominee last time,
Tim Walz,
has volunteered to do town halls in certain districts and certain states.
Oh, he'd be so good at that.
If your congressman won't show up for a town hall, and I'll bet you could get J.B. Pritzker to do it too.
I bet you could. Well, let's
get these Democrats out there.
With Walz, you have to bring in a covered dish because
you got to bring the hot dish with the tater tots on top.
Right, with the crinkle, because that's so good. That adds an extra
crunch.
It's so good
that way with the can of soup and the tater tots. It's so good.
Or floating island if you're bringing dessert. That's always a good one.
You could do that. It's got to have Jell-O, you know.
Or ambrosia. Oh, that ambrosia is so delicious.
Oh, the ambrosia is so good.
You made that with 7-Up.
Do you make it with the Cool Whip, or do you put the sweetened mayonnaise in yours?
I put sweetened mayonnaise and Cool Whip. I don't spare the expenses.
No, that's going deep. Okay.
Yeah. So and this is all from my grandmother's cookbook that I sent to my brother because he's a chef. But anyway, here's a little quiz for all of you. Do you recognize this voice from the past?
When the Soviet Union fell in the early 1990s, Ukraine was left with the world's third largest stockpile of tactical nuclear weapons and strategic nuclear weapons on the planet. But they signed this agreement with the United States, the United Kingdom, and Russia that basically said, if you give up your nuclear weapons, these 3 countries that signed to this, will provide for your defense and assure you of your defense. And so Ukraine did that. They gave up these weapons. Well, now, this was signed in 1994, 20 years later, one of the 3 countries that signed that agreement hasn't just not provided for their defense, they actually invaded them. And I want to make a point on this for a second. Think about if you're one of these other countries around the world right now that feels threatened by your neighbors. And the United States and the rest of the world are going to you and saying, listen, don't develop nuclear weapons. We will protect you. We will watch out for you. What kind of lesson do you think this instance sends to them? I think the message this is sending to many nations around the world is perhaps we can no longer count on the security promises made by the free world.
That was Marco Rubio 10 years ago.
Yeah.
When he had a soul.
Yeah.
10 years later, that same man is now Trump's Secretary of State. I said Musk.
Yeah, you're
that was
right.
a genuine accident.
Uh-huh.
Pathetic, broken, doing the bidding of a madman and taking orders from us incel children of the corn. Was it Charlie Pierce this morning who was quoting someone? Mm-hmm. I forget who he was quoting. But the joke is Marco Rubio sunk so far down in that couch that J.D. Vance would fuck it.
Yeah. I don't think that was made on the radio, but...
No, I don't think he said it that way anyway. Yeah. But anyway, let's get back to it. It would only take 7 patriotic Republicans to end this.
Yeah. Boom. It'd be over.
I'm sorry. I'm becoming an independent. I'm an independent.
Yeah. Well,
right?
I'll take it.
For Ukraine. And think of those congressmen who have a critical mass of Ukrainian Americans in their district.
Yeah.
Who are Catholic, who consistently vote Republican because of life, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Abortion, whatever. Right?
It's Catholics.
Because they're conservative Catholics. That's why. And they say, I'm an independent because Ukraine. But there aren't. Driftglass, as so far, there are not even 7 decent Republicans left in Congress.
Nope.
This happened last night from the New York fucking Times. Quote, Trump suspends military aid to Ukraine after Oval Office blow up. Mm-hmm. I love what all these headline writers are making it blow up. It's an ambush.
It was an ambush. It was a fucking ambush of a man who had come halfway around the world from a country that he's holding together with spit and willpower and American and European money.
To kiss his feet.
And they hate him because he's an actual tough guy as opposed to these pussies in the White House that these Republicans have elected.
He's a real man.
He's a real man. And he's up against these whiny bitches.
The two of them, Vance and Trump, wore more makeup than some
drag queens I know.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. The directive, which takes effect immediately, affects more than $1 billion in arms and ammunition in the pipelines and on order, unquote.
Yeah, and because there are no good Republicans, there is nothing to stand in Trump's way. Mm-hmm. Because Republicans have been tooling up for this war for decades. They've been getting ready for this for decades. This has all been preparation. The groundwork was laid by all your favorite Republicans over the last 30, 40, 50 years. And in a moment of truly black comedy, you know who else used the S word, the shame word, in the last few days? David fucking Brooks.
Oh, Lord.
Yep. And for those of you who are new to the planet and new to this podcast, that's for sure.
For sure.
There's some things you need to know about David Brooks. David Brooks has been one of the most important architects of the media mindset that Republicans must never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, be exclusively blamed for anything. Mm-hmm. Everything must always be either equally the fault of both sides, or some imaginary liberal sinner out there must be dragged into the mix to show that neither side is ever better than the other side, right? And really, it's not an exaggeration to say that Brooks and his many, many, many media imitators over the last 25, 30 years created the very permission structure that allowed Republicans to vote over and over again for the worst scum in the solar system by telling the public over and over again that Republicans skeet-shooting babies is really no worse than some made-up bullshit about some associate professor in the women's study program at Oberlin College. You know, the joke that I was making back in 2005 about David Gregory, you know?
Yeah.
If, or maybe it was Tim Russert. I don't know. It was a long time ago.
Roberts.
Yeah, it was Cokie Roberts. It was if Dick Cheney were caught on tape on the White House lawn throwing burning kittens at homeless veterans, what are the first 3 words out of fill in the pundit's mouth blank mouth? First 3 words would be, but the Democrats.
Yep.
They're fucking wired that way. And David Brooks was the worst. And so you have to understand how world-changing a Republican catastrophe has to be for Brooks to be unequivocally blaming Republicans for it and say it out loud that it brought him shame. It is as rare a thing as a great conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn, which happens roughly every 20 years. And lo and behold, this was David Brooks 20 years ago. In 2005, on the NewsHour, in the wake of George W. Bush's botched response to Hurricane Katrina, which at the time, since such things were not available, I transcribed word for word on my blog, never knowing that 20 years later, I might have a use for such a thing. But it's all up in my memory because I'm the king of no fair remembering stuff.
You are. You're the king of David Brooks, too.
It's in my head, honey. I wish it weren't. I wish there were other things up there like how to win at poker. But no.
This is his gift.
This is my curse. Quote, this is Mr. Brooks in 2005 on the NewsHour. Quote, just in terms of public confidence, when 9/11 happened, Giuliani was right there. And just as a public presence, he was forceful. No public presence like that now. So you had a surge of strength. People felt good about the country, even though we've been hit on 9/11. Now we've been hit again in a different way, and people feel lousy. People feel ashamed. And in part, because of the public presentation. In part, that is because of the failure of the Bush to understand immediately the shame people felt. Sitting up there on the airplane and looking out the window, that was terrible. And the 3 days of doing nothing really on Bush was terrible.
Yep.
Even today, I found myself, and as you know, I support his policies quite often, but I look at him today. And earlier in the program, this is how Mark Shields, and that was his former Republican or Democratic counterpart on that show for many, many years, must feel looking at them. I'm angry at the guy, and maybe it'll pass for me, but a lot of people and a lot of Republicans are furious right now, unquote.
Yeah.
Yep.
He abandoned Americans.
He did, to their fate.
At the stadium in New Orleans.
He slept through all the warnings. He ignored all the warnings. He put a totally incompetent asshole in charge of FEMA. Yep. And then he ignored the disaster as people were dying and drowning. Poor people, brown people were dying in New Orleans on his fucking watch.
Yep.
And what he will be remembered for throughout that entire catastrophe is, heck of a job, Brownie.
Yep.
That goes on his tombstone.
And in large part, it was because it was black people.
Yeah,
and we're a white supremacist country.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And 20 years later, this is David Brooks, still on the NewsHour 20 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Quote, and this is about Friday. This is about the Oval Office meeting. I was nauseated, just nauseated. All my life, I have had a certain idea about America, that we're a flawed country, but we're fundamentally a force for good in the world. We defeated the Soviet Union. We defeated fascism. We did the Marshall Plan. We did PEPFAR, which is President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, to help people live in Africa. And we make mistakes, Iraq, Vietnam, and he just glosses over these, by the way. Iraq, Vietnam, but they're usually mistakes out of stupidity, naivete, and arrogance. You know, just get over those.
Mm-hmm.
They're not because we're ill-intentioned. What I have seen over the last 6 weeks is the United States behaving vilely to our friends in Canada and Mexico, vilely to our friends in Europe. And today was the bottom of the barrel, vilely to a man who is defending Western values at great personal risk to him and his countrymen. Donald Trump believes in one thing. He believes that might makes right. And in that, he agrees with Vladimir Putin that they are birds of a feather. And he and Vladimir Putin together are trying to create a world that's safe for gangsters, where ruthless people can thrive. And we saw the product of that effort today in the Oval Office. And I first started thinking, am I feeling grief? Am I feeling shock, like I'm in a hallucination? But I just think shame, moral shame. It's a moral injury to see the country you love behave in this way. Unquote. Now, don't get too fucking impressed with David Brooks's shame. These rare spikes of conscience always fade back into bland, toxic both-siderism soon enough.
Yep. Having followed him for 2 decades now, I can guarantee you that eventually he will return to his baseline programming.
Yeah.
In fact,
there will be a today Donald Trump became president of the United States.
Yeah, or something.
Or something. Yeah.
Or something, liberals are bad too. Or what liberals
Or why weren't the tax cuts bigger?
Or Democrats.
He'll be doing that one.
What's wrong with the Democrats that they can't blah, blah, blah?
Yeah.
In point of fact, a gem mint example of how deeply Brooks's media cult of both-siderism has poisoned the public dropped literally into our laps as we were prepping this episode. I think Blue Sky user Empathy for All sent this my way. The audio you're going to hear is from a CNN segment entitled "Fired Veteran Who Voted for Trump 3 Times Talks to CNN." The context is the fired veteran is James Diaz, a disabled veteran who was laid off in February as a fuel compliance officer at the IRS. Diaz supports many of Mr. Trump's policies, but has been disappointed in how federal workers, especially veterans, have been treated during the president's overhaul of the government. And overhaul is doing an awful lot of work in that sense. Quote, this is Mr. Diaz speaking now. "I've given my life to this country. Not yet, Mr. Diaz, but it's coming. And to be laid off without warning or respect is disheartening. My notice of termination cited performance, and I know my performance is documented as excellent. Yet we were treated like garbage. Excuse me. I understand the need to trim the fat, but you can't treat people this way," unquote. Oh, but you're so very wrong, Mr. Diaz. So wrong. They can treat people this way. And they're going to go right on treating them this way because you voted to give them the power to treat them this way. In fact, you voted for it 3 times. So now that Mr. Diaz has had his FAFO moment, has gotten what's coming to him, does he regret his vote? Not one little bit. And why do you suppose Mr. Diaz doesn't regret his vote one little bit? Say it with me now, boys and girls.
You voted for President Trump not once, not twice, but 3 times. Did you anticipate that this might happen or regret your vote at all?
No, I don't necessarily regret my vote. I think the options that we had on both sides were, I think we could have had better choices on both sides.
And there it is. The million repetitions of the both sides lie, hammered into the public mind by Brooks and the rest of the legacy media cult over the course of decades, bearing its poisonous fruit, reprogramming the proletariat brain to automatically blame both sides for explicitly Republican atrocities. So take Brooks's shame and revulsion for what's happened in the Oval Office for what it was, a sign of what a tectonic political shift is taking place right now in front of everybody.
Yep. Now, other news outlets coped with Grandpa Syphilis losing his mind on camera differently. They just chose to edit it out of the transcript. There was a point at which, in the Oval Office meeting, after they had ganged up on Zelensky, where Donald Trump just had, there's no other word for it, he had a psychotic break. And I have a post at Crooks and Liars that we will link in our show notes called Major News Outlets Edit Out Trump's Insanity in Oval. The Associated Press.
Which you discovered.
I discovered this. Oh, by the way, I discovered this. Yes,
you did.
Drift Class was out running errands Sunday afternoon. And he came home and I said, I found something. And all I was doing was looking for a transcript of the Oval Office meeting, in particular, Trump's garbage about Hunter Biden's bathroom.
Right.
And I just wanted a transcript of it for our show notes and for, my own edification to see exactly what he said, share it on Blue Sky. And I went looking for it. And here is Associated Press, foreignpolicy.com, and globalnews.ca, which is a Canadian, aggregator of news. They just left that whole section out of the transcript. Now, I will not play this Trump clip for you, but there is a guy or a person, I don't know if it's a woman or a man or whatever, but this person put together Donald Trump as a third grader.
He remodulated the voice.
And this person's known as Brute on the Shitter, Brute, B-R-U-T. And he edited Trump's voice to sound like a third grader, which actually makes it more accurate and easier on the ears. But make no mistake, this is Trump talking here.
But what if anything? What if a bomb drops on your head right now? But they're okay. What if they broke it? I don't know. They broke it with Biden because Biden, they didn't respect him. They didn't respect Obama. They respect me. But let me tell you, Putin went through a hell of a lot with me. He went through a phony witch hunt where they used him and Russia. You ever hear of that deal? That was a phony Hunter Biden, Joe Biden scam. Hillary Clinton, Shifty Adam Schiff. It was a Democrat scam. And he had to go through that. And he did go through it. We didn't end up in a war. And he went through it. He was accused of all that stuff. He had nothing to do with it. It came out of Hunter Biden's bathroom. It came out of Hunter Biden's bedroom. It was disgusting.
And so that section where, he's talking about Hunter Biden's bathroom and Russia, shifty shift, Hillary Clinton, blah, blah, blah. The Pod Save America lads call this conspiracy Tourette's. And it is.
Yeah.
His brain he just lost it. And so you came home and I said, I found it finally at Forbes.
Mm-hmm.
Forbes did a full transcript of the entire meeting and included this. And so I'm grateful to Forbes and they published it. But as I sent out on Blue Sky to the other 3 outlets, because I didn't go exhaustively and look at all the other outlets, but I thought 3 was enough. Foreignpolicy.com said their transcript has been edited for length and clarity. Whose clarity are you editing for?
Yeah. The story here is that thing.
That he lost his mind, that he's not all there.
That's the story.
And you omitted it, foreignpolicy.com, on purpose. And then AP News, who, will not say Gulf of America to their credit, and got kicked out of the White House for it. It's now state-run media in the Oval Office all the time. They said, here is a transcript of the key moments of the exchange. No, you left out a key moment of the exchange. Trump's frenzied outburst about Trump, Russia, and, Hunter Biden's bathroom, which Zelensky's just sitting there looking at everybody like, are you hearing this?
Mm-hmm. And shifty shift.
Shifty shift and poor Vladimir Putin putting up with all this abuse.
Russia. Yeah.
Alexei Navalny would like a word.
Yeah, exactly.
Finally, this Canadian outlet, globalnews.ca. Here's a transcript of the meeting as it broke down.
Yeah.
Your version is an edited transcript where you removed Donald Trump's clear mental break. You are concealing what the story is on purpose.
Yeah. Now we don't do the what we used to call the steeplechase anymore.
No.
Because why bother? We don't watch MSNBC anymore. Maybe one day if they ever fire Joe and Mika.
Yeah. If they fire Joe and Mika, we might go back. Yeah.
Sure. But I can guarantee you without looking that that the psychotic break that Trump had is never going to Fox viewers and OANN viewers are never going to see that.
Well, and I was thinking about that this morning, that of course, the reason Roger Ailes created Fox News was so that next time Nixon wouldn't have all these problems.
Right.
And Nixon wouldn't be forced to resign.
Right. Burn the tapes. You just burn the tapes.
Burn the tapes and rewrite the tapes and edit the tapes so that our core voters and everybody who's both sides and checked out on politics will never know about our crimes.
Right. And one of the main reason this went off the rails so fast was that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance were lying about the timeline.
Yeah.
And it's not open to debate what happened and in what order and who invaded who and who's responsible for what. Yeah. And correcting them on that is something that drives them insane because every other fucking Republican, they cannot stand someone's telling them that they're wrong and that they got it backwards and they're lying. And they lose their shit when that happens.
And did you see the little tiny backtrack that Vance took this morning?
No.
Vance went on Fox this morning and said, I was the peacemaker at that meeting. Because he can't take responsibility for what Trump said. Right. And this is his out.
Well,
Trump was so mad.
He was a piece of something in that meeting. But
he was a definite piece of something. And the part where he says, where Vance said to Zelensky, you went to the opposition.
Right.
I mean, that is straight out of Stalin.
Right. No, you didn't. You went to the sitting president of the United States and the vice president.
And thanked the American people for their support.
Exactly. Yeah. That's all that happened. But to Republicans who are paranoid, vicious, racist thugs, you went to the other side and tried to undercut us. And that's how they're always going to be till they're dead. They're all going to be this way until the earth covers them. And that's just what we're going to have to live with. Now, you alluded earlier to the AP getting kicked out.
Yeah. And it's just state-run media in the White House
of the
now.
press pool. Well, regarding that, this is from CNN. The White House is now deciding who can cover the president, reversing decades of precedent, which is hard to say president and precedent in one sentence, but I managed to do it. So
you did. Congratulations.
Send us $5. Send me $5.
Hey, support us on Patreon. Patreon.com/ProLeftPod.
Wow. We have that in our back pocket at all times. This was from Peter Baker. Quote, having served as a Moscow correspondent in the early days of Putin's reign, this reminds me of how the Kremlin took over its own press pool and made sure that only compliant journalists were given access. To which Trump Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt.
I want everyone to take a deep breath before they hear this quote.
Right. Mm-hmm.
If you know Peter Baker at the New York fucking Times. All right, I'm going to take a deep breath too, okay?
And if you got to go to the bathroom, go now because you're going to leak a little bit. You hear this.
This is what Carolyn Leavitt said about Peter Baker.
She responded to Baker on X with a clown emoji and called Baker a, quote, left-wing stenographer, unquote, posing as a journalist. Yeah, Baker's definitely one of ours. He's on our podcast like every other week. Just
oh, God, left-wing stenographer.
So let's get one thing very clear. The outcry over the AP getting kicked to the curb and replaced by Stormfront or whatever, and the call for Axios and Fox and the rest of the legacy media to, do the right thing by standing with the ousted news services and refusing to take a seat until they're readmitted has nothing to do with democracy or journalistic integrity, because that horse left the barn a long time ago.
Yep.
And we've written about it on our blogs and talked about it on our podcast for decades. This is all about protecting the perks and privileges of the club, of the legacy media club, which we've already talked about 100 times over the past 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
This club thought they were protecting their self-interest by signing a mutual non-aggression pact with Fox News decades ago, when Fox was getting its wrist slapped by the Obama administration for, their incessant lying and conspiracy mongering.
Yep.
Which they were doing. Like Neville Chamberlain, the legacy media club was stupid enough and blind enough to sign treaties with thugs who were guaranteed to break them just as soon as it was to their advantage to do so, even though the legacy media has already bent over backwards to appease Republican scum for decades.
There are great people at Fox.
There are great people at Fox. I know so many good people. No, Greta is great. Let's hire Megyn Kelly. That's a great idea. So they're already getting their appeasement, but that's not enough. Now it's to Fox's advantage to tell Trump to fuck all those guys. It'll just be us kids in the club. And all of those good intentions and all of the sucking up and all of the appeasing that people like Chuck Todd did that we talked about in the last episode was for nothing, because these people were never going to honor those agreements anyway. This was Zerlina Maxwell commenting on Dana Bash's August 2024 interview with Kamala Harris, which I'm sure most of you remember. This was on Threads, August 30th, 2024. Did you watch the interview? What were your takeaways? I had a hard time getting through it because of the questions, but I think Harris-Walsh did perfectly fine, even though they had to spend 40 minutes responding to Republican talking points disguised as an interview. Dana Bash was such a fucking embarrassment.
It was horrible.
Yeah. This was the same Zerlina Maxwell on Twitter the same day, August 30th. I took notes to keep track of the questions in the Kamala interview. Only 4 questions weren't a GOP attack or talking point in the form of a question. How does this type of interview help voters understand their policies at all?
Nope.
Well, they don't.
It was utterly substanceless.
Right. And it was them. It's all of these people surrendering in advance, laying down for Trump, and it didn't do him a goddamn bit of good, because he's going to go to the newsroom and say, we're going to put in Stormfront, and we're going to put in Breitbart and whoever else, and fuck everybody else. And what are you going to do about it? You're going to sue me? You're going to threaten me? No, the time to stand up to Republicans was like 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago. But you didn't do it. And now here we are. So after you, darling.
Yeah, well, finally, we got an email. I got an email notification from the Atlantic newsletter, which hired David from.
More laughter. More laughter ensued.
This just made both of us laugh, and I did forward it to you, and you laughed as well. Atlantic newsletter's title of their email was "The Great Forgetting" by David A. Graham, staff writer. Quote: Andrew Cuomo's comeback from what seemed like a set of career-ending scandals is one sign of the weird amnesia that some Americans have about the recent past.
Which Americans? What Americans are you talking about? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I want to end before we go to the news roundup. I do not criticize anyone who's into astrology or crystals or whatever they want to be into to get through the day. I do a Bible lesson every morning. You know, whatever people do. But I do subscribe to free will astrology because he's such a good writer.
Yeah.
And he had, this is the guy at Free Will Astrology, whose name I forget, I'm sorry, Rob Bresney. And he has a series of quotes in this morning's newsletter, including one by Charles Bukowski. What matters most is how well you walk through the fire.
Yeah.
And Lisa Nichols says, when you can't control what's happening, challenge yourself to control the way you respond to what's happening. That's where your power is.
Yeah.
And then there's that very famous quote that you see everywhere these days from Dinos Christianopoulos. They tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of inspiration there. And we need it. We need it these days.
We're going through the fire. But, you know, as with our little commie Sunday school, it was comforting to know that we're not alone.
Right.
That when we're making a reference or talking about a thing or are outraged or ashamed by something, that there are people around us who are like, yes, that is shameful. We should be ashamed of that. We should be outraged by that. We're not alone. We're going through the fire, holding hands. It still burns like a motherfucker.
Yep.
But there's...
And I have to tell, I didn't tell you about this earlier because we were getting ready to do show, but this, one of the things that I've been doing for Junior Dude is looking for social opportunities that he can fit into his very irregular schedule, because he has different work hours every day, and he just isn't able to fit things in. But one of the things I was looking up today was Indivisible.
Yeah.
And I just was, searching through their website and so forth. And there is a postcard to voters group meeting in Hawaii to write postcards for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And that just made me feel great. Like, well, come on, folks. Everybody is together on this.
So, Junior Dude, hop on a plane, go to Hawaii.
No.
No.
He can't afford that.
No. That does make me feel better. It really does.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not changing the world, because the world is what it is, and these people are going to do what they're going to do, and it's going to be awful. It's going to be awful for years.
Yeah.
And cleaning up after is going to take the rest of our goddamn
lives. It's our
lives.
job, but it's our job.
But there is some comfort in knowing that we're not crazy. We're
not crazy.
And it's worse than that, Blue Guy. It's so much worse than not being crazy. It's seeing this coming for decades.
Yes.
And jumping up and down and warning this was coming, and now it's here.
And we've had 10 years to tell people, and we have been telling people, that there is no rebranding for you when this is over.
No.
And I think with the FAFO stuff, I think it's been just a little bit surprising to MAGA to see our side saying, no more. This is your fault.
And also, it's been a little bit heartening for the people who say, now, come on, when they see the light and they decide that maybe they made a mistake and maybe next time.
We should be welcoming them into our side.
Yeah. You are welcome to go to the back of the fucking line and spend the rest of your life apologizing to people who weren't wrong.
For having to go through this.
Yeah. This is something
I was right to throw up the morning after election.
Yeah. This is something you teach children. When you break something, you don't say, well, I guess it's broken. Let's all move on. No, you apologize and you fix it and you pay for it and you make amends for it. And you never do it again. And that part of the process has been missing from the rehabilitation of
since
Republicans.
Nixon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Since the civil rights movement. Since we can keep going back. Since the Civil War. Since before that. Yes.
Since the Peloponnesian War, people. Okay, that's how far back it goes.
No, and it is to the point now, very much on the left, that apology isn't enough. And there needs to be reform in how you vote. And it's all we're asking you to do is vote for your own financial interests.
Stay home.
Over your bigotry.
Shut up and stay home. 3 times
shut up
is
and
enough.
stay home.
3 times. No. Third time, you don't get forgiveness.
No,
Third
you
time,
don't get forgiveness.
No.
You
Sorry.
knew, but you wouldn't vote for the black lady.
That's right.
All right. Let's do a news roundup from The Atlantic again. Quote, Donald Trump is fond of saying that trade wars are easy to win. Among the litany of patently false Trumpisms, there's that word again.
Mm-hmm.
This may well prove one of the most disastrous, you think?
Mm-hmm. One of the Wall Street Journal's editorials this week is entitled, if you're over there looking around, Trump takes the dumbest tariff plunge.
So they don't have Jeff Bezos telling them that they're only supposed to talk about personal freedom.
Amazon stock.
Amazon stock. Yes,
Amazon is awesome. Amazon is great. Capitalism's great.
From ABC News, quote, U.S. consumer confidence plummeted in February. It might have just been that they didn't go shopping.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
The biggest monthly decline in more than 4 years. 4 years, a research group said Tuesday, unquote. Translation, biggest monthly decline in more than 4 years means during the entire Biden administration. We know the media just wants to erase those years as having not happened.
Right. But they happened. We were there. We wrote some shit down during that period.
Planes didn't crash for 4 years.
Yeah. This is from The Record Media, quote, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and oh, how it pains me to say those words, last week ordered U.S. Cyber Command to stand down from all planning against Russia, including offensive digital actions, unquote. Gee, I wonder why.
Chinese crypto mogul Justin Sun, who also owns the LA Times, I believe.
Nope, wrong guy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Pop. Start over again. 5713. Chinese crypto mogul Justin Sun bought $75 million of the $Trump coin, then had his pending civil fraud case halted by the SEC. Drukguys calls this the teapot dumb scandal.
Yeah.
It's the corruption, stupid.
Yeah.
You can buy your way out of crimes.
Yes. This is the good old days of Rome.
Yeah.
When you could literally just buy the judge and buy the jury, and if you were wealthy enough, you were never punished for it.
No consequences. Yeah.
Trump's Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, says the solution to high egg prices for Americans, I thought this was a joke, it's not a joke, is to get some chickens and raise them in your backyard. Keep fucking that chicken, Brooke Rollins.
Yeah, I'm sure she has chickens in her backyard. And having chickens in your backyard, backyard chickens never get bird flu.
No. But first, you got to get a backyard. Yeah.
What if you don't? Hey, Brooke Rollins, what if you can't find housing?
Mm-hmm.
And what if you can't find housing with a backyard?
Mm-hmm.
You know who had a plan for that? Kamala Harris.
Yeah, she did. She sure as hell did.
But we are not that people.
No.
Apparently.
Nope. We're not.
This is not who we are. Kamala Harris, this is not who we are. Okay. From The Guardian, quote, Trump orders swaths of U.S. forests to be cut down for timber.
Mm-hmm.
President's move to expand tree cutting across 280 million acres evades rules to protect endangered species. Donald Trump has ordered that these America's forests be felled for timber, evading rules to protect endangered species while doing so, and raising the prospect of chainsaws raising some of the most ecologically important trees in the United States.
Yep.
This is to prevent lumber prices from going up because of his trade war with Canada.
Yeah. First, declare trade war on our number one timber partner, and then say, we need to cut all our forests down, all of our old growth, ancient forests down for wood.
Where there are endangered species in the trees. And as the trees. Yep.
Cut it all down, burn it all down. That's what your Republican friends voted for, boys and girls. According to Trump on his social media health site at 7:30 this very morning, quote, all federal funding will stop, all caps, for any college, school, or university that allows illegal protests, whatever the hell those are. Agitators will be imprisoned or permanently sent back to the country from which they came. American students will be permanently expelled or, depending on the crime, arrested. No masks, all caps. Thank you for your attention to this matter, unquote. Which I think is pretty cool because that means just 5 protesters could cripple garbage conservative schools like Liberty University, Bob Jones, Colorado Christian, Auburn, Texas A&M by just showing up with signs and wearing masks. So, way to go. Go do it.
He can't wait for the summer when he can send the U.S. military to shoot people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
That's what he's wanting to do.
I've been told that, if you start talking about them imprisoning and shooting protesters, it will discourage people from protesting. And I hate to rain on your doom parade, but you're just, preemptively discouraging them.
You're obeying in advance.
I'm saying forewarned is forearmed. This is what they're promising to do. Know that going in.
Yeah. From CNBC, Social Security has never missed a payment. Doge actions threaten interruption of benefits, ex-agency head Martin O'Malley says. Mm-hmm. Seniors who live on less than $2,000 a month are being advised to set money aside just in case Elon Musk and Donald Trump interfere with their monthly payments.
Yeah.
I can't wait for the Hang Mike Pence crowd to find out their checks aren't coming.
I'm waiting to see who they'll blame. I have a feeling they'll blame Obama.
Yeah. Kamala Harris.
Sure. Per Media Matters, Fox News repeated the lie about hundreds of millions of dollars in widespread Social Security fraud because dead people and non-existent people were collecting Social Security checks. They repeated that 43 times in one day. In case you're wondering why people like Mr. Diaz believes the shit they believe, it's this kind of stuff. Lies about $55 billion being saved were mentioned 87 times in 1 week because they never apologize, they never correct, and they never retract.
From Jeremy Kondike on Blue Sky, the carnage of USAID program cancellations by Pete Marocco yesterday makes clear that Marco Rubio's waivers for life-saving programs were a total farce. Countless life-saving programs that had received waivers from Rubio were subsequently canceled by Marocco, who's running the State Department. From Empty Wheel, quote, the important thing about Marco Rubio reneging on his life-saving USAID waivers is that Republicans like Senator Bill Cassidy and Senator John Cornyn were assured they'd continue, unquote. They were lied to.
I'm sure they're Susan Collins' level of concerned about being lied to.
Yeah.
From The Hill, Washington Post loses 75,000 subscribers after Bezos ordered op-ed pivot. The Post has lost 75,000 digital subscribers since its owner and Amazon founder Jeff Bezos announced changes were coming to the Post opinion section, NPR reported Friday, citing internal subscriber figures. This, by the way, is in addition to the hundreds of thousands of cancellations that occurred when Bezos spiked the paper's Kamala Harris endorsement.
And Driftglass, why don't you read the next one and then I'll do local news.
Thank you. This is Axios' Sarah Fisher's ludicrous reaction to the racist purge at MSNBC. Quote, MSNBC will lean into its progressive roots in the Trump era. Really? MSNBC's new president, Rebecca Cutler, plans to announce broad programming changes to the network that elevate some of its most progressive voices, sources told Axios. Why it matters? Because Axios always says why it matters. The change signals the network's intent to double down on its liberal bend instead of moving towards the center in a new Trump era, unquote, which means that Joe Scarborough and Michael Steele have pledged to wear their free Mumia sweatshirts on the air every single day.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
This is local news from the Chicago Sun-Times. Mm-hmm. Quote, Chicago scientists reel from Trump funding cuts. We are just going to abandon all those discoveries. On Friday, scientists will leave their labs to protest cuts to research in Chicago and across the country. Seeing clearly is literally the life work of Anna Vlasits. She is a neurobiologist at the University of Illinois, Chicago, studying how neurons work together in the retina of your eye to make vision possible. I'm a basic researcher, Vlasits said. I'm brand new to UIC. I started my lab job about a year ago. Jane Miglow is a biology graduate student trying to cure ovarian cancer, which kills 140,000 women worldwide every year, including my mom. Mm-hmm. My whole lab focuses on women's health, Miglos said. It's already an area that's underfunded in comparison with the lethality of the disease. A lot of grad students are feeling very discouraged, Miglos said. Programs around the country either are not admitting students or have significantly reduced the number of grad students they're taking next year in anticipation of funding cuts. The cuts were so abrupt, the prestigious University of Pennsylvania found itself clawing back offers to graduate students who had already been notified they were accepted. As tough as these cuts are for universities, at least those have been paying students to soften the blow. The cuts will be ruinous to standalone institutions like Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory. Founded in 1890, it's home to 8 Nobel Prize winners and employs 1,000 people. The impact to Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory and other academic scientific research institutions is unsustainable, the New York lab said in a statement. The U.S. has long been the leader in scientific research. If this NIH guidance stands, the country will see a loss of discovery, innovation, and competitiveness, and ultimately a loss of well-being in the nation's health and economy. Research initiatives are simply vaporizing in the chaos. Miglos spent half a year preparing a proposal for her project, exploring how ovulation can spark ovarian cancer, which seemed on its way to approval until the NIH was decimated, giving her time to worry that language in it could cause her proposal to now be rejected for reasons that have nothing to do with scientific merit. The word woman is being potentially censored in the verbiage of what's being said in grants, she said. The first sentence of the fellowship I submitted to the NIH has the word woman in it because that's where ovarian cancer is, unquote. And as Driftglass said to me as we were going over our show notes, this is why you have dick pills and overturning Roe v. Wade.
Right. That's right.
You have penis enhancement gummies.
Mm-hmm.
And no rights. And taking away maternal death rate statistics in Texas.
Right. Because if you don't
we are a misogynistic society. That is who we, there's that word again.
Mm-hmm.
That is who we are.
It is who we are. It's who we are now.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to be this way forever, but this is definitely who we are now.
We don't have to be this way.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
And we know who to blame. We know who to blame for this.
Both sides, Blue Gal.
Nope.
Both sides.
Nope.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, everybody, feel free to write to both of us at proleftpodcast@gmail.com. We do love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write to us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go Postal Unions. Letter on the air, unless you say otherwise. If you're coming to Springfield anytime, send us an email and let us know. We'd love to have coffee with you.
We'll show you at least one Lincoln site, which
we'll
is not hard.
We'll show you a picture of Lincoln. We will.
Guaranteed.
I promise.
You know who's on the $5 bill? Blue Gal? So don't forget.
It's not a coincidence.
No, it's not. It's currency down here. It's our Bitcoin down here.
It's our Bitcoin. It's a $5 bill.
Do not forget our gourmet coffee guidelines. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, buy one for us. Because this isn't charity. This is actually our job. If you can spare $5 a month, please spare $5 a month at patreon.com/proleftpod. Please also, if you can, share our show on social media. Give us likes and subscribes and upvotes and all those cool internet things. And if you love this podcast, please get someone else to listen as well. And thank you so much for doing that.
Hey, Driftglass, how are the internet kitties doing this week?
Well, Blue Gal, this evening, the internet kitties are choosing to watch Daredevil, a show about a vigilante who defends the powerless and beats the crap out of corrupt thugs, instead of watching the joint session of Congress address where a corrupt thug will be beating the crap out of the powerless.
Good choice, internet kitties.
Yeah, always the best choice internet kitties always make. I love you, darling.
I love you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Let's think about living. Think about living. Let's think about loving. Think about loving. Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the loving, lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying and the fellow and the switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2024-25, GGBG Productions.